Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios, TD. Normally in 1 hour at 3 o'clock, just a little programming note. He'll be at 3:30 today because of Titans availability. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
Boy, I'll tell you, it is an exciting time for all these football teams in the NFL that are not the Tennessee Titans. I mean, it's like, even if you're a team and you think your team stinks like the Steelers, but you don't know that your team stinks and they can make the playoffs, at least they've got something to play for. Meanwhile, every Titans press conference I listen to has been something along the lines of, do you like the idea of playing spoiler? And it's like, no. What gets you motivated to play these 3 games? Well, I guess football's fun, so that's why I'm motivated to play these 3 games. They're kind of all the same. Derrick Henry had like a 2-minute and 30-second press conference today. He was not in the mood to talk to people. So I've been thinking about this for a little bit, and this is absolutely going to be one of the instances where hindsight maybe rules the day here. But I think it also has to do with realistic expectations. Because going into the year, I had expectations that the Titans were going to make the playoffs. I had expectations that the Titans were going to compete. And I remember Coach Bob Shoop was telling us last year at the end of the season, he's like, I see a team that needs to head to a rebuild. And I heard that. I'm like, Coach Shoop, I love you. I think you probably know all there is to know, but I'm not interested in a rebuild. To me, this Titans team was 7-3. And I'm talking about the 2022 team. This team was 7-3, and they were on their way. And then the owner fired the general manager in the middle of the season, and that kind of screwed with people a little bit. Then the quarterback got hurt. And then even with a third-string quarterback on the road at Jacksonville, you were an inch away from winning that football game. You had a horrendous problem with injuries last year, and an offensive line that was an unmitigated disaster that surely was going to be better. But a lot of people around the country kept talking about rebuild. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to believe it. But that's what the general consensus outside of Nashville, Tennessee was. And this is a problem that I think Mike Vrabel has created for himself this season. And I'm not sure that he's realized that he caused it. But one of 2 things happened this year. Either one, he did know that this team was headed for a rebuild. He knew ahead of time, and he wasn't honest with the fans, or he grossly overvaluated this roster and the players that they added to patch the holes from last season's roster. It is the job of a leader to get out in front and set expectations for everybody. Barry Trotz has done that with the Predators. When Barry Trotz took the general manager job, he came on this show and said, fans, be patient. Fans, give us grace. I read Joe's column from the other night when they got blown out by Vancouver, and Joe was talking about how just the aura around the team, the fan base, everything else is just so happy-go-lucky. And the reason why is because they told us, this is our plan, but you have to understand the expectations that come with our plan. The Titans don't do that. The Titans always leave us guessing, trying to figure out what their plan is. We don't even know. When they went into the draft, we don't know. Were they planning on a rebuild? Or were they planning to trade up, draft C.J. Stroud, and turn around and go compete with him at quarterback with no second-round pick and no third-round pick and no first-round pick next year? Serious question. Like, did they think that when they signed Andre Dillard, that Andre Dillard was going to come in here and beat Taylor Lewan? And again, I don't know the answer to that. But Mike Vrabel didn't say any of that. In fact, when he was asked on Bussin' with the Boys about whether or not the Titans were going to be in a rebuild this season, he flatly denied it.
A lot of noise saying that the Titans are in a rebuild year.
I don't ever think that in this league. I don't. I'm never going to believe that. I think that our guys will prepare, our guys will fight, and I think we got a chance to beat anybody.
Okay, so either Mike Vrabel was lying and saying deep down inside, like, yeah, we know this team's not good enough. We're going to have to rebuild this team. We're going to take it on the chin, Amy. It's going to happen. Or Mike Vrabel grossly, along with Rand Carthon, mismanaged the building of this offense, which of course starts with the offensive line. Mike Vrabel grossly mismanaged his coaching staff, which we all know with the special teams coach, and it looks like by letting Jim Schwartz leave, the defensive side of the ball. If Mike Vrabel had started last offseason after Rand Carthon was hired and said, guys, and I'm talking about, to the fans, this is going to be a couple years process. Again, he's not saying we expect to lose this year, but he's telling you, hey, where we are right now, we've got some holes and we've got, the way we're going to build this football team. This is how you sell people on a rebuild. Instead of saying, oh, no, we're going to do whatever we can to compete. Then after you lose, get up at the podium and say, well, look at our cap situation. There's no way we could have gotten anything better than Andre Dillard. Instead of doing that, which is what Belichick did the year that they brought in Cam Newton, and it was a bad look for him. But the key to this is to say, guys, where we are right now is not where we want to be, but trust our process, but just know it's not going to be a one-year process. It's going to be a multi-year process. That way, not one player on that team hears that and thinks they don't believe in us, but the fans understand, like, look, we're not there yet. Like, we're not ready. Instead, they went out, signed DeAndre Hopkins. They brought back Ryan Tannehill. They brought back Derrick Henry. They did all of these things that told us, hey, they think they're going to be right back where they were last year, right there fighting tooth and nail at the end of the season, but they'll have a better offensive line. And this time, because they'll have DeAndre Hopkins and because Traylon Burks and Chigakonkwo are going to be better and because they're going to win that game with Ryan Tannehill at quarterback. Then they drafted a guard with the 11th overall pick. If that doesn't say, hey, we're gearing up to go this year, I don't know what does. But then they drafted a quarterback with the second pick, and it's like, whoa, are you going for it or are you rebuilding? And it has kind of felt that way all year long, like all offseason, all season. It's felt 1 foot in trying to compete now and 1 foot out worrying about the future. And I'm not sure you can do that. But regardless, this season has been an epic disappointment. Tennessee Titan fans are spoiled because this team has not been this bad for 8 years. In fact, I remember when the Titans made it to the playoffs that year under Malarkey for the first time in forever, and I was like, oh my God, I missed the playoffs. I remember the year before that. They played a game at Kansas City where Ryan Suckup had to hit like a 55-yard field goal in like -3-degree weather in order to win the game. But a win there put them right in the playoff discussion. And I remember standing up before the kick and thinking to myself, God, I have missed these games. These big, meaningful December playoffs like that. I've missed these games. And we've had nothing but that for the last 8 years. Until this year. And at some point, Mike Vrabel's going to have to tell the truth to the fans. At some point, Mike Vrabel's going to have to be honest with the fans. See, the problem is he's trying to act like Belichick, but that doesn't work if you don't win. Just ask Belichick, because it's not working for him. And one of the biggest mistakes Mike Vrabel made was not being honest with the fans about what the vision for the football team is. It is very easy to tell people what your vision is without telling them exactly what you're going to do to get there, which would give away state secrets. And they didn't do it. And I also wonder what they were telling the owner. Were they telling the owner, Miss Amy, this roster is not in good shape. This team, there's no way we can fix this offensive line. It will take time, Miss Amy, for us to fix this offensive line. Or did they tell her, we signed Andre Dillard, we've solved our problems? And again, we don't know the answer to that. But I do think it's important to note that if they did believe this team could compete, and they did believe that Andre Dillard could be a good left tackle, or Aaron Brewer could be a good center, or Jack Gibbons or Monty Rice could be a good starting inside backer in the NFL, then the owner should have serious reservations about their opinions going forward. And that's where I am today. Again, I don't mind telling me what I don't want to hear. I don't mind Mike Vrabel saying, guys, this is going to be a multi-year process with what we're dealing with right now. What I do mind is I mind being treated like a moron. Like, what would you expect us to do, Jared? We look at our offensive line. Right. You built it. That's what I have a problem with. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on the program. And there was something else I thought about, because it does kind of feel like where we sit with the Titans, it's like the Titans season in review as far as they're concerned. There was something I thought about with the Titans where I'm like, man, going back to the competence of the group that's putting this all together, did they really miss on a big opportunity? We'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. Make your silly underdog picks for your chance to win weekly prizes. You can play at theGameNashville.com or the 1025 The Game app. Silly Underdog Picks is presented by Volunteer Hose and Gasket.
So if you're looking to point blame about the Titans' offensive line, first, point at the guys who haven't done their job well. And second, and this is the second time I've asked it, I asked Vrabel what degree of guilt or blame goes to the people who decided that this group was good enough to protect the quarterback and to block for the run game. And he avoided the question the second time, and it'll be one of my first questions at the season-ending press conference.
Oh, goody.
Those are the people who are culpable for the pass protection and the run blocking are Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon, who assembled this group and thought it was sufficient.
That was Paul yesterday talking about, look, the problem with the offensive line. I love first, he's like, the guys that aren't doing their jobs. So are we going to be mad at Andre Dillard for not being good enough, or are we going to be mad at the Titans for investing in Andre Dillard to be good enough when he never was good enough and they thought he would be good enough? You see what I'm saying? Like, Aaron Brewer is playing his tiny little tush off. The problem is his tush is tiny and little, and that's not going to change. And so I'm not mad at Aaron Brewer. I think Aaron Brewer is doing the best job Aaron Brewer can do. I'm mad at the coach, and I'm mad at the general manager that thought that those guys were starters in the NFL. It is your job to evaluate players in the National Football League. And so Joe brought this up yesterday. I wasn't going to name names, but Joe brought this up yesterday, apparently at morning skate at the Predators game against Vancouver in the morning. Apparently, it was like Peyton's place over there of everybody talking about what Big Bad Jared had to say on Monday at 2 o'clock. About, there's Big Bad Jared just wanting to fire the coach and fire the general manager. Jared just wants to fire everybody. That's all Jared ever says, other than the fact that I haven't called for a Titans coach or executive to be fired in the last 8 years. And 8 years is a long time to not fire somebody in the NFL. So you got to give us credit there. And Gentry Estes said to me, I wasn't going to bring this up until Joe brought it up yesterday, but Gentry Estes said to me on Tuesday at the Preds game, he said, look, people are talking about there's Jared wanting to fire everybody, but he was right when it came to the Predators. And you know I was right. So I kept thinking about, why am I ready to jump the shark? And everybody else, oh, no, have to give it time, have to. And here's why. Because I don't think the Titans' commission is very smart. Vrabel and Carthon. I think the principle of the idea that not one person is responsible for making final decisions about the football team is ridiculous. And I don't think there's any team in the NFL that operates that way. And if they do, they're stupid too. But they don't. And don't give me San Francisco, because as John McClain has pointed out several times, it is in Kyle Shanahan's contract that Kyle Shanahan has final say on the roster. So I think that the whole commission thing is dumb to begin with. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the roster building style of chess that is required in the NFL, and Vrabel and Carthon. I am talking about the way that people use the media instead of getting used by it. I talk about the way that they express where the team is or what their expectations are to the team's fans. When the general manager, we think, trades away one of the most popular players, he needs to talk. But then I was thinking about something today. And this is why I am so ready to write this duo off and the commission and everything else. I keep thinking about draft night. Draft night was a fireable offense one way or another. The fact that the Houston Texans were prepared to draft Will Anderson Jr. with the 2nd overall pick, and then were going to try to trade back up with Seattle to 5, and had to change their plans because they knew who they were competing with for C.J. Stroud. And that is a fact. Charles Robinson has reported it, and guess where Charles Robinson lives? Houston. But not only did the Titans get used by the media on draft night, whether it was them giving Diana Rossini the plans or Arizona leveraging the Titans by putting it out there saying, hey, Tennessee wants this number 3 pick. You think you're going to take Will Anderson Jr. You know we want Will Anderson Jr. at 3. Tennessee is trying to get this number 3 pick. So if you take your defensive player, they'll take your quarterback. That could have happened. I don't know why Diana was in the building, and the fact that it was Diana is a pretty obvious tell. But again, let's just say the Titans didn't use the media to their advantage at all. And I go back to something Rand Carthon said at his pre-draft press conference, which probably didn't seem like a big deal at the time. But now that we know how the story plays out, we know how the game ends, I'm like, this was not the right course of action by Rand Carthon. So he's sitting there a week before the NFL draft. They've got the 11th pick, and he has been asked about every little nook and cranny of the team. Now, at this point in time, TD told us at the Combine that the Titans like C.J. Stroud the best. But at this point in time, Ian, don't you think they probably had their mind made up that they were going to try to go after C.J. Stroud?
Probably, maybe.
Okay, so Rand Carthon, you think maybe 1 week out, they're going to make a trade where they go out and they trade away like 5 picks in order to get the number 3 pick? You think maybe they thought they were going to try to get C.J. Stroud? No, they thought they were going to try to get C.J. Stroud. So he's sitting there, again, knowing that the card that he wants to play, the trick up his sleeve, is he wants to shock everybody and draft C.J. Stroud. I asked him about Ryan Tannehill and a commitment to Ryan Tannehill, and here's what Rand Carthon said.
What about the personal side of these guys and the rumors that come out about their contracts? And it seems like it's been very persistent with rumors about Ryan, including yesterday on SportsCenter. Can you make it easier on the player, in this case on Ryan, to shut it down and say, no, like Ryan will be the quarterback this year?
So just to let you guys in, Ryan and I had a conversation back in February that was between Ryan and I and Ryan and our organization. So Ryan knows where he stands with us, and that's really all that matters to me.
Okay, he said nothing, right? What if he had gotten up there and said, Ryan Tannehill is our starting quarterback, and we believe in Ryan Tannehill, and we think Ryan Tannehill, this, that. Number 1 headline, ESPN. Titans general manager commits to Tannehill. Now what's that do if people find out you're trying to get C.J. Stroud? Because at that point, in 1 year, they have to think, hold on, wait a minute. They just said they love Tannehill. Like, he just said it. He just said he loved Tannehill. Instead, he leaves it so open-ended that everybody has to make their own assessment of what that actually means. So the Titans could have used the media to hide their interest in Stroud, or at least to pump up the belief that they're invested in Tannehill, and instead, they don't do that and they let the media use them. And that's just one of the many incidents where I'm like, was this really the smart thing to do? Was it really the smart thing to do to spend the entire offseason bickering with Kevin Byard over a $3 million pay cut? And I just have seen too many things where I'm like, that's not the smart way to do it. That to me, it's okay. I think I've seen enough on this. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We will get to your phones coming up here. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game.
I'm excited for Rand and his staff to work closely with Coach Vrabel and the coaches to align on a vision for the team and to build a roster of players who best fit that vision. Together, they will identify talented players and ultimately the right players to build a championship roster. Despite how last season ended, I still have high expectations for our team. We have some big questions to answer off-season, but I'm excited for what the future brings.
There you go. That was Amy Adams Strunk. And I really wonder, like when she's like, hey, I am very excited. I am very excited for this season. Do you think she meant it, or do you think it was just like, please, fans, buy tickets? I know we're going to be terrible, but please buy them. Or we have a lot of questions to answer, and you answered them with Andre Dillard and Arden Key and Aaron Brewer and Daniel Brunskill, and you got lucky that DeAndre Hopkins fell into your lap. I do wonder if the owner knew a bad season was coming. And I also wonder this, right? If you've got $100 million to spend, and I don't know exactly how much money the Titans have, but it doesn't matter because the Titans can always spend more money because the cap ain't real. So whatever the amount of money she's willing to pay, I don't know how much money they have committed for next season, but even if you do look at one of these websites that tells you how much money they have committed for next season, like they're not going to pay Andre Dillard, so don't worry about it. That's another, $10 million that you get that you're not really committed to, that you're going to cut off your roster. So if she's giving them $100 million or whatever it may be to spend, do you want the guys that, again, you got up there and said, these guys are going to find the right players for this team, and they went out this offseason and they failed, specifically on the line? Do you trust that to happen? Or do you look at it and say, well, you blew my $40 million last year, so now I'm going to give you more money, and let's see if you don't blow it as bad this year. And I think that's a fair question to ask. Phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com at 615-737-1025. One texter says, nobody in the NFL ever admits to rebuilding. It goes against the league's PR campaign and macho image. Yeah, do you think Arizona Cardinal fans, and I don't know if there are fans of the Arizona Cardinals or not, but do you think Arizona Cardinal fans thought that this season was going to be a playoff-filled year? When they ran out Josh Dobbs as their quarterback with that lack of talented roster they had? Do you think people there are like, boy, I tell you, Monty Ossenfort screwed up? No, they're looking at their draft, and they're looking at the players, and they're like, this is a team that decided we're tearing it down to the studs. And now Arizona is going to walk into this thing, and they're going to have a very, very high pick, and they may have their choice of, do we go quarterback or do we go Kyler and get one of these great, they tell me Marvin Harrison Jr. is supposed to be great. I don't know. But do we get that kind of player? So rebuilding absolutely exists in the NFL. And again, there is a way to say it without saying it. And the way to say it is to say, look, this is going to be a multi-year process, and we believe in where we're trying to go. So be patient with us, fans. Be patient. One texter says, when the Titans are a playoff team this time next year with Vrabel and Carthon, will you admit that you were wrong? I will admit I was if they suck again, but I'm greatly looking forward to seeing the revamped offense after the draft and free agency in particular. Well, what else would you be excited to see it after? I have a feeling all these doom and gloom segments will age like milk next year, says the texter. Will I admit it if the Titans turn this around? Absolutely. Sure. And I'm not ruling out the possibility that can happen. I have been known to have been wrong on occasion. Just occasion. But, I mean, I got the same text about John Hines and David Poyle. I got the same text. Remember when Chris Mason came on for the great debate about John Hines?
I forgot about that.
And he was like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Hey, Minnesota's not doing terribly right now.
Doesn't matter. Let's ask Chris who he thinks the coach should be. Hines or Burnett? What's great is I already know the answer because he can't say Hines. Oh, it's great. But I was right about that. Like, I was right about the Predators, and you all know it. I was right about Craig Aukerman. One texter texted in and said, Jared, be honest, you called for Aukerman to be fired on a weekly basis at times. Right. And I was right about that. To which I replied to the texter, I was right. I said, that's the point. And the texter said, I'm not arguing that. He was awful. Then what are you mad about? Oh, my goodness. But yes, anytime that there is a mistake that's made on my part, I have always been one to put my hand up and say, oh boy, I was wrong about that. 2017 Predators, I thought they'd get beat in 5 games by Chicago. They swept them. I made fun of all the local media that picked the Predators to win. I don't even know how they still picked the Predators to win. It was everybody in the local press corps at the time, except for Robbie and Adam, picked the Predators to beat the big bad Chicago Blackhawks. And I just felt like everybody did it. They picked it because, as I said at the time, and I don't want to rehashing anybody mad at me, I said at the time that I thought that they were homers, and everybody got mad. But I still don't. I mean, they got it right, and I got it wrong, and boy, I was wrong about that. But I still don't know how they picked the Predators to win that series. I will admit it if I was wrong. The only coach in the 8-9 years I've been here, the only coach that has coached their way from I think he should be fired to I think it's a travesty that they did fire him is Derek Mason, the Vanderbilt coach. And the reason why I thought he should be fired was because James Franklin had built Vanderbilt football into something that was at least somewhat respectable in the SEC. And as soon as he left, Derek Mason came in, and it was right back to same old Vandy. And it was in just embarrassing fashion that it went back to same old Vandy. And then Derek Mason started to win some games against Tennessee, and, he won 3 in a row against UT. And I'm like, you win 3 in a row at UT, you should be the Vandy coach for life. Then he got fired after the COVID year when they didn't win a game in the SEC. And I'm like, that's just not right. You expect, in a year where there's no non-conference football, the Vanderbilt coach to win games in the SEC. And not only that, COVID had the certain element of the more liberal schools had more people that were not interested in showing up on campus and things like that. And so Vandy had like their entire offensive line opt out. And you expected Derek Mason to go and compete in SEC games with no offensive line? And again, it's not his fault that he didn't have an offensive line, like it is Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon's fault that they don't have an offensive line. And so I thought it was totally unfair that Derek Mason got fired at Vanderbilt. He's the one coach. He's the one coach that when I'm like, they need to fire this guy, that I have regretted saying that about. Don't regret it about Kevin Stallings. I don't regret it about Ken Wisenhunt. I don't regret it about John Hines. I don't regret it about David Poyle. Is there anybody? I don't think there's anybody else. Now that I think about it. But yeah, if you want me to sit there this time next year, if the Titans are challenging to be the number 1 seed in the AFC, or the Titans are, at least good again, I'm not talking about like competing for a playoff spot, because the Steelers are competing for a playoff spot and they're terrible. And I was wrong about them this year. Holy crap. But if I'm wrong about it, I'll be the first person to say, boy, I was wrong about that. I was real wrong about that. Texter says the real question is, did the owner tell Vrabel and Rand Carthon that there would be limited money for free agency prior to 2026? My guess is limited money and build the team with draft picks. Well, I don't know why Rand Carthon would have taken the job if that's what she was telling people. I mean, I understand the idea that there's only 32 of these and you don't know, when they are in that kind of situation. Like, to be given an opportunity to run an NFL team, I get it. And again, it's like I said to somebody the other day who told me, well, John Robinson did him no favors by trading A.J. Brown. And I'm like, the only reason he has a job is because John Robinson traded A.J. Brown. So none of these situations are perfect, but I can't imagine that the owner said, hey, we're not going to spend any money in free agency until 2026. And Rand Carthon said, sign me up for that. Because, look at Chicago. That place is a crap hole. They have a quarterback they didn't draft. Their team is terrible. They used their first-round draft choice this year in order to get a killer first-round draft choice next year. And those guys are getting fired. Now, they did some dumb stuff, like trading the 32nd overall pick for Chase Claypool. But those guys are getting fired 2 years into this. So you don't take the job if they tell you we're not going to be able to spend any money. One texter says, who is on your short list for true options at offensive line coach that has experience and can get this ragtag muffin bunch to actually work as a unit, finding some true leadership or a pinch of light bulbs that can get better in protection in the past games? And I don't know what the rest of this text says. Some of you people need to proofread your texts. I mean, I've said this. I think Amy's got to go to Vrabel. And I think Amy has got to say to Vrabel, Mike, me and you, have to go to Mike Munchak. And we have to ask Mike Munchak to come back to the organization. And there's going to be a lot of pride being swallowed in order to do that because of how things ended with Mike Munchak as head coach. But I don't see why they wouldn't do that. One texter says, Jared, you called for Arthur Smith's job before Tannehill was put in. Ian, is that true?
Called for Arthur Smith's job? I don't remember that in particular. Before Tannehill was put in?
Do you remember what happened with Arthur Smith before we decided Arthur Smith was a good coach?
There was a few rough weeks there.
But were they rough weeks on this show?
Well, there were some people that were calling in complaining to Floyd about Arthur Smith and the hire of the OC.
And where was Jared on all of this?
I believe you'd like to say you were neutral.
I was totally out of it. This is what happened with Arthur Smith. A bunch of you guys got mad, specifically the Carolina game where Derrick Henry touched it 2 times in the first half. All of you guys were screaming about Arthur Smith. Floyd defended Arthur Smith tooth and nail. We had loaded phones. And I said, all right, here's what we're going to do. We are going to let you argue with Floyd about Arthur Smith. But I just want this known for the record that I have no opinion on Arthur Smith so far in his tenure. That was the exact wording I used. I said, I have no opinion. And I said it at the time. I'm like, I want everybody to remember this, that I had no opinion. And then a couple weeks later, Floyd was like, you were the one that was on Arthur. No, sir, I was not. In fact, I told you right then and there, it was the callers versus you, and I was out of it. So don't be saying I was trying to fire Arthur Smith, because I wasn't trying to fire Arthur Smith. I mean, plus we're talking coordinator, and I know I brought up Ackerman, but like that was just such a, contentious situation between even me and the coach. But coordinator, I think, is a little different than head coach when it comes to wanting to fire somebody or not fire somebody. Joe brought up Shane Bowen. He's right. I did want to fire Shane Bowen after the 2020 season. And then I got off Shane Bowen's back after the last 2. But it does kind of feel like Jim Schwartz was a big part of that. And I love now, Paul Kaharski gets a text message from Mike Vrabel, and he can't run fast enough to be able to tweet that stuff out. And so Paul is on the morning show yesterday, and he's talking about Jim Schwartz didn't do anything. He wasn't even around the building. He wasn't even in it. That wasn't what we heard when Jim Schwartz was there. When Jim Schwartz was there, we heard, hey, what's Jim Schwartz do? That's top secret classified information. We're not going to let you know. Now, all of a sudden, since Jim Schwartz is gone and they suck on defense again, it's like, oh, Jim Schwartz didn't do anything anyways. Yeah, bull crap. I saw your defense with Shane Bowen running it when Jim Schwartz wasn't here. It was an unmitigated disaster. I saw Shane Bowen's defenses with Jim Schwartz, and it was really good in 21 and decent, good enough in 2022. I've seen the defense this year. You turned Devin Singletary into Walter Payton on Sunday. I saw that. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. And there is another thing that it probably doesn't bother you anymore, and it doesn't even bother me as a Titan fan. It does not bother me. But I think it might bother the person whose opinion matters the most. We'll get to that coming up next. And it came out of the mouth of J.J. Watt here on Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025. Join me, Chris Sanders, and Derek Mason at Teddy's Tavern this Sunday for the award-winning pregame show, starting at 9:30 until 11:30. We'll break down the Titans and the Seahawks, and the award-winning pregame show is presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment and Beast Unleashed. And bowl season is back, and 102.5, 106.3 The Game, and 94.9 The Fan are your homes for your college football bowl games, and of course, the college football playoff presented by Twin Peaks and Parman Tractor and Equipment. Catch the Boca Raton Bowl tonight at 6:30 on 94.9 The Fan as South Florida takes on Syracuse. For a list of games carried on 102.5, 106.3 The Game, and 94.9 The Fan, hit up our website at thegamenational.com/bowl games.
In terms of this game, like, I absolutely love everything that surrounded it, from like a rivalry standpoint, from everything from the Oilers and the Texans, from Houston, all the history. I think it's something that we kind of miss in today's world a little bit, is those old school, like, hate each other rivalries where it's like, we absolutely cannot stand you and we hate this, we hate that. Like, this is a real thing with the uniforms. And again, for the 10,000th time, so Tennessee fans can stop coming at me, I understand who owns it. I know the rules. I know the laws. I understand how it all works. That doesn't mean I can't wish it was different. So you lost. You're out of the playoffs. That sucks for you. We won. You guys get to keep the uniforms. Yes, I know technically you get to keep them. I wish that we could put them on the line because that would make it the coolest rivalry in the history of sports.
Yep.
But I just love the feeling of how much hatred there was for this game, and how much you could tell even the Texans owners after the game and their reactions and the way that they lived it up, and how much it meant, and how much it hurt on the other side. It feels good to be on the winning side. I was watching that one very closely.
J.J. Watt yesterday on the Pat McAfee show. So, again, that's on Wednesday. The game was on Sunday. I mean, I don't want to assume how I feel is how everybody else feels. I do think that because I am a Titans fan and grew up a Titans fan, that I think I have a lot in common with the fans because I am one. And I don't, have this pompous of, I'm above the fans or anything like that, because I am a fan. But I'm over the game on Sunday, right? Like, I'm not hung up on, oh, my God, they lost to the Texans, and it was so embarrassing and bad, and I'm over it. Again, you stink, and teams that stink lose those games. There was a great opportunity for Will Levis to get another victory and for Will Levis to lead another comeback fourth-quarter drive, and it didn't happen because either he misfired to DeAndre, or the coaching was bad, or DeAndre didn't catch it, or they missed a PAT, or whatever. You lost, and I'm over it. But obviously they're not still over it in Houston, where JJ is talking about, I was watching that one very closely. It's good to have great rivalries where there's true hatred. And you could see it, JJ said, that just the Texans owners, it meant something more to them. Well, what's that mean for somebody on the other side of the rivalry? Again, I don't really care about what happened on Sunday, losing to the Texans in Oiler uniforms. The Texans don't bother me. I hate the Colts more than I hate the Texans. I don't like the Ravens. I don't like the Jaguars. The Texans are kind of far down on my list. They really don't bother me that much. Now, if they get good, maybe they will. But, the Texans don't really bother me one way or another. But I don't own the team. And the people that do own the team, the people that do decide, hey, let's wear the Oiler uniforms against the Texans, the people that did bring in Billy White Shoes Johnson and had Earl Campbell in attendance, and are they over it? And actions always speak louder than words. Everybody tells me Vrabel's safe, and Amy loves Vrabel and blah, 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 and maybe Amy still does. Maybe she still loves Vrabel. But do you think she loves him as much after that embarrassment that they had on Sunday? Will Amy still love Mike Vrabel if they get their teeth kicked in 2 weeks from now at Houston? Remember, Ken Wisenhunt got fired after Houston. Special teams coach Bobby April got fired after Houston. John Robinson got fired after A.J. Brown. It was personal. When it's personal, the Titans take it a little bit more seriously. And so while I don't give a rat's ass that Mike Vrabel showed up in the Bum Phillips hat, and I don't care that the Titans lost to the Texans any more than I would care if they had lost to Jacksonville or Indy or really anybody, I don't own the team. And the person who does own the team does care about those things. Texter into the text line says, my guess is in free agency, Danico Autry will be signed away from the Titans, which will be the sign that the only rebuilding team that the only rebuilding the team will do will be through the draft and a limited number of low-dollar free agents. Look for big money just before the new stadium is open, limited money until then. Well, if that's the case, then the coach and the general manager aren't going to make it. I use Mike McGlinchey as the example, right? You guys love to bring to me some of these, somebody just puts out on Twitter like offensive line stats and with no context to them or even no idea if they're true or not. And people are like, look at these offensive line stats. You guys love to tell me that Mike McGlinchey stinks, the right tackle for the Denver Broncos, who wanted to be here, who was with Rand Carthon in Houston, and the Titans had no interest in. All I know is the Denver Broncos line was an unmitigated disaster 2 years ago, and it's not that bad now. That's what I know. But that's because they spent money in free agency. So if Amy doesn't want to spend money in free agency or doesn't give them the money to spend in free agency, and all they're bringing in are Scarbini, Aziz Al-Shaair free agents, well, then they're going to lose more games next year, and they're going to get fired. And that's just a reality. Because if what's happening this year is what's happening next year, then there will be more questions than answers at that point. People will still be wondering about the future of the quarterback, and the coach will get the blame for it, and so will the GM. So, you can tell me what you think is going to happen in the regard to what they're going to spend, and I'm just going to tell you if that is, in fact, what happens, then it's over. Then goodbye, don't worry about next year. And I just can't imagine the Titans doing that. And I can't imagine Rand Carthon taking the job if the owner said, we're not going to give you any money. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. So, here's my question for everybody. When it comes to the Titans, do you believe the excuses? Are you making the excuses? We'll get to what those excuses might be, and we'll do that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5-1063 The Game. And let me tell all the fine folks that tomorrow between 9 and 11, Chase and Big Joe will be giving away tickets to see Kenny Chesney and Zach Brown Band at Nissan Stadium on Saturday, August 3rd. Each weekday winner will also qualify to win a $250 Electronic Express gift card. That is tomorrow morning between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. with Chase and Big Joe. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios. TD will be here in 30 minutes for the TD Power Hour. Titan coaches with a later availability, so we will hear TD fresh off talking to the Titan coaches. Okay, the Titans are out of the playoffs. The Titans have had a bad season. Let's just call it what it is. They've lost to bad teams in embarrassing fashion, whether it's the two Indy games, the Saints game, the Steelers game, whatever. Last week against the junior varsity Texans, it has been a dismal season, and there are 3 games left, and everybody's being asked in the locker room, what motivates you for these 3 games? But what happens with fan bases is that excuses get made. The one that I love so much that college football has incorporated is he just needed more. He needs time to put his program in there. It's odd Jerome Tang didn't need time last year at Kansas State in order to get them into the Elite Eight. Jeff Brom, my Louisville coach, we were terrible. He didn't need time to put us in the ACC championship game. It's odd, though. All these other coaches need time. It's always an excuse, right? Now, sometimes excuses are valid. Why are the New York Jets bad this year? Ian, you want to guess? Why do you think? I have my reason for why the Jets are bad this year. What's your reason for why the Jets are bad this year?
Well, one reason is their quarterback got hurt.
Aaron Rodgers got hurt 4 plays into the season. I mean, that's why the Jets are bad. And everybody knows it. So that excuse is valid. Now, what they do with their coach and general manager is their business. I don't follow it close enough. But, I mean, again, I can't be mad at the coach and general manager that Aaron Rodgers got hurt. But with the Titans, we've got so many excuses other than our coach and general manager, the commission, screwed up. And I was thinking about all these excuses that we have, so we decided to take 100 text messages on the Stillman and Company show and come up with the top reasons for the Titans' 2023 season failures. Okay, put them on the board. Let's see what number 1 is.
Offensive line.
The offensive line. That's the number 1 excuse. I don't know. What about how they put together the offensive line? Do we ever talk about that? I mean, I remember going crazy and screaming on the show when they made Aaron Brewer the center at $4.3 million. I remember when it came out that Aaron Brewer was getting not the right of first refusal tag, but Aaron Brewer was getting the second-round tender tag. They were so afraid somebody else was going to want a 270-pound center. They just gave him $2.5 million for free. All right, what's the number 2 excuse for the Titans?
John Robinson.
Oh, yeah. Can't forget that one. Oh, Jared, it's not their fault they drafted Isaiah Wilson. You know what's funny is that the Philadelphia Eagles drafted Jalen Reagor in that same draft. You can recover from a bad draft choice. In fact, the year before, they drafted Andre Dillard, and somehow they survived that. Now, look, it doesn't help that Farley and Radin stink, and the A.J. Brown trade was disastrous, and that's why Robinson lost his job. But not one guy on this offensive line, other than Radin's, was signed or drafted to the current contract by John Robinson. Those are Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon decisions. All right, what's the number 3? Show me number 3.
Amy.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Got to blame the owner here, right? Got to blame the owner. Now, the only thing I blame the owner for is I blame the owner for last year. For firing Robinson the week of the Jacksonville game and then the team playing distracted and then lying, oh, no, we weren't distracted. I watched a game. I saw the problems. This year, I think the commission is stupid. I think one guy should be in charge, and I think that should be communicated. But other than that, I don't really have a problem with what the owner did. Give me number 4.
Vrabel/coaching.
Ah, yes. Coaching. Certainly on the list. Especially Aukerman. And then we got this Vrabel coaching staff, man. Oof. All right, show me number 5.
cap space.
Oh, cap space. Yes, the cap. That's one of my favorites. Jared, what were they supposed to do with the cap situation the way it was? I'm like, you do realize they had more cap money than Denver. And again, this is what the websites say, like the cap rankings. They had more cap money than all these teams that went out and added premium free agents. Cap space. You guys are so freaking clueless if you believe in the cap. And I don't get how a smart person like Joe Rexroad can die on this hill of the salary cap. And then it's like, I mean, it's maneuverable, but it still exists. Doesn't exist for the Saints. Paid $100 million for a quarterback. Doesn't exist for Cleveland. Doesn't exist for Buffalo. Doesn't exist for Baltimore. But, oh yeah, cap space. That's a good excuse. All right, give me the next one.
Special teams.
Oh, yes. 3 games. And we can argue 4 because they missed a PAT against the Texans. I got to give Tom Quinn, the new coordinator, my coordinator, I got to give Tom Quinn some credit. He got up there today, was asked about the PATs, and he said, look, man, we got to make these kicks now. Like, we got to make the kicks. But the Saints game had a punt block. That was 3 points. The Colts game had two punts blocked. The Jaguars game fumbled a punt. The Ravens game fumbled a punt and allowed a big punt return. And look, you didn't lose it, but that Eric Guerra return against Miami could have just been absolutely disastrous. All right, we got 7 up there on the board. The top 7 reasons that the Titans stunk this year, the excuses. We surveyed 100 people. Here's what they told us. What's the last answer on the board?
Jared Stillman.
Me?
Always you.
What did I do? What did I do? Why am I on the list of excuses? Oh, my goodness. Offensive line, John Robinson, Amy, Vrabel, cap space, special teams, and me. Maybe need to do a fast money or something as far as we're concerned. Thank you to the responses. Here's the question I have for everybody. Do you buy them? Like, do you buy the excuses? This is the way I feel about it. Is do you buy the excuses that your football team this time last year, regardless of how bad things were with injuries, and they were horrendous as far as injuries are concerned last year. I think it's been much better this year than it was last year, though the Titans still have some serious injury problems. But last year, you were right there. Your team had problems, but you were still right there. The guys you moved on from, Robert Woods, Dennis Daly, and I mean, they weren't even that good. And yet here you are, and you've got 5 wins. Your record is as bad as the Bears. How did that happen? And so again, I ask the question, those are the excuses. Do you buy them? Or do you think that something needs to change to keep the same thing from happening again? And I got to be honest with you, I don't know the answer to that. 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in on the program. 615-737-1025 here on Stillman & Company. Again, TD will join us later this hour. I did see something pointed out today at the Tim Kelly press conference that I truly wonder if it's pointed at me. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Well, let's see how Tennessee handles this here, as they're going to set up for 3rd and 8. Arch, you don't get any yards here, then potentially 4th and 7, 4th and 8. What do you do with the football right around midfield? Tennessee right on the fringe of their playoff chances dwindling.
Because in theory, you don't really have anything to lose, but if you end up punting, then you're essentially conceding the tie.
Levis is thrown for just under 200 yards. Here they come again, and they get to Levis again. Desmond King. Boy, Levis is in pain. He's hurt. You see him clutching down at his left leg. Oh, boy. He has been beaten and battered in this game. 7 sacks produced by this Houston defense.
Oh, that's...
Just hate to see this. With this town, a buzz over this kid starting to come into his own at quarterback. And it's that lower left leg that they are looking at with the athletic trainers.
Yeah, this is a shame.
There you go. Second quarterback hurt this year. And we know the offensive line was terrible on Sunday. We know the offensive line has been terrible all year. We know that Jalen Duncan at left tackle's probably not a long-term option. And again, the one thing that I've said that I think has made a lot of people mad is that Peter Skoronski's not playing well enough for the 11th overall pick. And like Joe and Robbie were talking about that yesterday, which was basically like, Jared's a little over the top about it, but he is right. Like, this is not good enough for the 11th overall pick. So Tim Kelly had a press conference today, and Paul Kaharski tweeted this out. And I picked up on this. I'm like, holy crap, this is actually a big deal. And what Paul tweeted out was the way that Tim Kelly used the word perceived, right? Like, Jared Stillman is perceived sometimes to be an a-hole. I don't think that's true, but, that's the perception, right? So I guess the question is about Skoronski and Duncan's performance on Sunday. Here's what Tim Kelly said.
In terms of the way Skoronski and Duncan played on Sunday, what do you say to those guys to kind of reel them back in and get them ready for this week?
Yeah, I mean, it's, show them the things that they did well, show them the things that we need to improve on, and make sure that they understand that we've got another good opponent coming in here and on, however many days from now, 3-4 days. So it's whether it was a perceived great game or perceived, not so good game, whatever it may be, like we got another opponent coming in the game. So we got to make sure that we're able to make the strides and make the corrections and improve on the things that we did well on, continue to enhance those, and get ready to go play another team here in a few days.
Whether it is perceived that it was a good game or a bad game, what the hell does he mean by that? I mean, everything that he said outside of that word was fine, right? Which is like, what do you tell Duncan and Skoronski as they get ready for the Seahawks to turn the page? Well, we have to coach them up. We have to show them the corrections. We have to work through with them about the things that need to be better, and that's how we're going to go every game. We're going to try to get better. Whether it's a great game or a bad game, we're going to try to get better for the Seahawks coming into town. That's fine. But what he said there with the word perceived, Ian, can we get right to that point where he starts, I know you're going to try to get close, where he says it's perceived? Like, it's almost like he stops himself and it's like, well, perceived to be a good game or bad game.
So it's whether it was a perceived great game or perceived, not so good game, whatever it may be.
He said that on purpose.
We got another opponent coming in the game, so we got to make sure that we're able to.
That was on purpose. Did he think they didn't play poorly on Sunday? I mean, serious question. Is there some secret coaching tape that we didn't see that says these guys played well on Sunday and we just don't understand football? I mean, I understand the idea that like the Pro Football Focus grading system is complete bullcrap because those guys that are grading the tape, they don't even know what play is being called. I mean, Floyd used to tell me when he would grade the tape, he'd show up at 4 a.m. and be done by about 9 o'clock at night, grading every player on every play. But he had the call sheet in front of him, so he knew what the plays were every time that the play was called. That makes sense. But the idea that we can't watch with our eyes and see Duncan and Skoronski on Sunday and say, woof, that smells. I mean, that's ridiculous. Like, I'm not a doctor, But if your arm is falling off, I think you've got a problem. Did he think they played well on Sunday? Is there some kind of super secret football, something that we don't know about? I mean, these Titan coaches, and I'm telling you this is going to sound mean, but it's not. I'm just telling you this for your own good. Please take your head out of your ass. Whether it's Vrabel or Kelly or Bowen, or just take your head out of your tush. Because I think one of the problems that the Titans have had this entire season, including going back to the formation of the coaching staff, was too much head up ass. And it's like, dude, season's over. Mistakes were made. Some guys aren't good enough. Some guys need to be coached better. Some guys won't be here next year. Like Jalen Duncan's not going to be your left tackle next year. So if he's going to be your left tackle for the rest of the season, just suck it up. And after, when you're asked questions about his terrible performances because he's not good enough to play left tackle in the NFL, say, yeah, we got to work with him. We're going to keep working on it. We're not going to give up. We're going to keep. Again, go back to where let's start that from the beginning of the answer, where he like stops himself. And you can tell he's clearly thinking about what to say. He's clearly doing what I call you-knows, where you listen to somebody talk, and if they say you know about 6 times in about a 20-second span, they're using time. They're stalling to think of how they really want to say this.
Yeah, I mean, it's, show them the things that they did well, show them the things that we need to improve on, and make sure that they understand that we've got another good opponent coming in here and on, however many days from now, 3-4 days. So it's whether it was a perceived great game or perceived, not so good game, whatever.
That little break right there was the moment where he was stalling to think about how he wanted to say what he was going to say. And what he wanted to say was whether it was a perceived great game or a perceived bad game. Buddy, it was a bad game. You got sacked 7 times. You got the quarterback hurt. You couldn't run for a freaking yard. It was a bad game for the offensive line. It was a bad game for those two in particular. So why do we have to pretend like it wasn't? I mean, and I think Tim Kelly's actually doing an okay job, and then I hear stuff like that, and I'm like, oh, God. Another one of these Vrabel guys that can't admit that they're wrong, or they have to fight every little thing. And here's the other part, too. Not everything has to be a secret all the freaking time. If it was perceived to be a bad game, which it was, explain how it wasn't. It is okay to do that, right? Like, let's say, Trevor talked about, how some of the mistakes Peter made were really Aaron Brewer's fault. And he could be totally right about that. But if that's the case, then explain it. It's okay. I'm sure the Seahawks are not going to sit there and use the information about you explaining what wasn't good enough that they probably can see on tape. And even if they do, it's not going to ruin your season. It'll be okay. It'll be okay. Texter said Jared's perception of Peter's play was a lot different than Trevor's. True or false? I'd say probably false. Trevor didn't think he had a good game. Trevor thought that one of the mistakes was Brewer's fault. But I think the bigger difference is that Trevor thinks Skoronski is coming along and has the potential to be a good guard in the NFL. What I think, and again, these are big picture things, is that's not good enough. The potential to be a good guard in the NFL. Peter is a starting offensive lineman in the NFL, which a lot of these other guys aren't. But the idea that Peter Skoronski is going to develop into it, that's not good enough. Not anymore. I mean, like, when you're the 11th overall pick, you need to be good right away if you play guard. It would be like if I drafted a kicker with the 11th overall pick. I would expect him to kick the ball through the uprights. And I would expect him to do it every time and probably from 80 yards away because I used the 11th overall pick on him. And I think Trevor would tell you that he is not a superstar right now, which is exactly what I think he probably needs to be. But again, perceived to be a bad game. I don't even perceived to be it was a bad game. TD is here for the TD Power Hour. We will get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in on our program. Make sure to make your Silly Underdog picks so you can win weekly prizes at thegamenational.com or the 1025 The Game app. And Silly Underdog Picks is presented by Volunteer Hose and Gasket. TD is with us for the TD Power Hour here on Stillman and Company. So, TD, I want to start right here. I want to open it up for you. I've been watching the Titans for 25 years now, and I've seen some bad, just straight-up stinkers before, and Sunday is right up there at the top against the Texans. The season is over. No shot at the playoffs. No shot at any real interesting game down the stretch. Got division games, everything else. This feels like it's been the season from hell. How did it get so bad, and why did it get so bad?
Is that Ian or Nick Folk behind the glass talking about can I kick it? I like the Tribe Called Quest reference. I'm not going to let that go unnoticed. I mean, it got bad just because poor decisions on the offensive line, right? The Andre Dillard signing, like, that crippled this team. That's really the bottom line. And, again, I understand it because you're looking at the first-round sticker, the talent, and you're like, okay, maybe change the scenery will help them. But I think there's something to be said to the part of it, the psychological part of it. Like, I'm with Chris Sanders. Like, I'm not going to, like, directly call him soft, but he doesn't have that canine in it. He doesn't have dog in him. And that's a problem, you know, when you're an offensive lineman. So I think you got that. Daniel Brunskill, I think, has been a solid signing. The right tackle situation, they kind of got caught with their pants down there. Dylan Radins is starting to develop there, but it's just been an issue. So I think you look at the offensive line. I think you also look at just, you know, how things have gone wrong as far as, like, getting off to a bad start, and you have just different things swirling around in the locker room. The vibe at times isn't all the way where it should be. And that's not everybody, right? That's not everybody, but there are some in there where it's like, yo, what the F is going on? You know what I mean?
Sure.
And that happens, right? When you're losing, nobody wants to lose. Like, you prepare all week and Monday through Saturday, right? And then you get in there Sunday and you get to take the test and you fail the test, right? So that's a big problem. I'm trying to think what else. I think they did a good job as far as the receiving core is concerned. Just things haven't worked out with Traylon Burks, you know. You also look at the Hopkins signing. I thought that was good. You did a good job there. The cornerback situation, I get this, you know, I get it, right? Like, you're looking at it, okay, Murphy Bunting comes in and he'll be a starter. You got McCreary, who played solid. Fulton, unfortunately, you know, had spurts where he was solid, but then he had spurts where he struggled, and then also he's hurt. And that's a tough thing. So, I mean, there's just a lot that just going on that it's just been, I'm not going to call it a season from hell, but it's just been bad. It's been bad. But, you know, the positive in all this, you found Will Levis. And I think Will Levis is going to be a good quarterback in the future. I really do. I believe that firmly, that he's going to be a legit quarterback, a legit starter. He's always looking to learn. And the thing I like is it's like the way he's able to morph into, you know, like, take something that's a shortcoming and make it into an area of strength. And the best example I could give you of that is the touch passing, right, where he's gotten so much better on that. Mm-hmm. See him in August and July, it was like, Lord have mercy. Like, you're not Nolan Ryan. Like, get a changeup or a curve to that too. And he's gotten that.
I think my thing is when you brought up the Andre Dillard thing, and to me, I think we can all agree on this, right? Like, football is a funny game where a couple bounces here or a couple bounces there, and a season is totally different. You know, Floyd used to always talk about how there's always going to be teams like, and this was when the Patriots were good, the Chiefs and the Patriots, that are always going to win 14 games every year. And then there's always going to be the teams that really, really stink and, you know, Chicago, whatever, win 2 or 3 games a year. Yeah. And everybody else is kind of in that 8-8, 6-10, 10-6, and just a blocked punt here or this there or whatever. But I think we can all agree that, like, the Titans' 5-9 record is a well-earned 5-9.
It's a well-earned 5-9, but think about some things, right? Look at the first game. Had it. Look at the last, well, not the Dolphins one, obviously, because they won, but look at the last 2 losses.
Right.
Extra point. You're missing extra points?
So, and that's where Like, I think you've won some games like that too, so they kind of balance out.
They kind of, I mean,
Chargers kind of felt that way. Where
Falcons, I could see it.
Falcons, you got lucky that you got Desmond Ritter's worst day, which is just he stinks.
But Heineke ended up
just lighting him up,
playing well,
lighting him up.
So.
I guess for me, I've really lost my faith in Mike Vrabel. And 2 years ago, I had a lot of it, and I've just completely lost
it. September.
I've totally lost it. Just
Wow.
totally. Like, and I don't know if he is like a shelf life coach that's like such a good motivator that he comes in and for like the first 4 years, it's like everybody's pulling the rope in the same direction, which is the way it was when Laviolette was the coach here, and then he gets fired, and now he's gone to the Rangers this year, and best team in the Eastern Conference, and like that's just how it is. And in 4 years, they'll fire him. Like, that's just...
I get what you're saying.
Right.
I talked to some of the players about that. Now, I can only tell you what they told me, but they said that's not the case. They actually said he's done a good job of keeping them motivated and keeping the morale high. Now, this isn't me defending Mike Vrabel. This is me just relaying what I've been told. Now, I will say this. He didn't just suddenly forget how to coach. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And, yeah, there are some things like... And that's why if you notice, like the last week or so, I've been asking a lot about in-game adjustments. Because it's like you guys start off well, but as the game goes on, what's happening?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Like at some point, when are you going to stop Devin Singletary running the ball right up the middle every time for 7 yards?
And you know what that is? It's not having the horses. I mean, look, no disrespect to, Quentin Bohanna, Jaleel Johnson, Marlon Davidson and those guys. But like you take Marlon Davidson, for me to say this, because Marlon is a guy that I really like.
Yeah.
But there was a play where Devin Singletary ran right into him. It's like a 3rd and short. Went right into him. Bounced off the tackle, got 4 more yards. First down, keep the chains moving.
But wasn't the thing about Vrabel was that, he could take guys that weren't that good and they would find a way. And now he's taking guys that aren't that good and they're not finding the way.
Yeah, I mean, there was, as you call it, the Vrabel special.
Right.
We saw that in Miami. Now, has it been consistent? No.
Now, the thing about the Vrabel special is there is a downside to that.
Yeah, because they'll lose the game they're supposed to.
Like at the Jets with Zach
win.
Wilson and Corey Davis going bananas. Like that kind of game is the downside of the Vrabel special. I just feel like I've really lost my faith in Vrabel in a whole lot of, like, I don't trust him with the coaching staff at all anymore. I don't like his coaching staff. I'm not saying that he just hires his buddies because I think that that's over-exaggerated, but I do think that he invests in guys that are either not qualified or have not done a good enough job, and he continues to push them through. I mean, they say that Jim Schwartz didn't do anything when Jim Schwartz was here. I mean, I saw what it was like before Jim Schwartz, and I'm seeing what it's like after Jim Schwartz.
I mean,
I'm thinking Jim Schwartz played a big role in that.
It's hard not to say that.
And it's a little thing like that where I want my head coach to be able to, like, if Jim Schwartz is really, the mastermind behind this or is a better defensive coach than Shane Bowen, I want my head coach to be able to see that so that when then Jim Schwartz says, hey, I'm getting some offers to be defensive coordinator, it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. You're going to be our defensive coordinator. Shane, I love you, baby, but you're going to have to make a change. You know what I mean?
That's a tough move to make.
I know it is, but Sirianni made it this week, and I'm not sure it's the best move to make. But
that's a different situation because, if I'm not mistaken, Sirianni and Sean Desai don't have a whole lot of ties like Vrabel and Shane in this case. But at the end of the day, if you're preaching what's best for the team is always best for the team, it's a decision that you got to make if you're faced with that. So I agree with you there. I just think you have to. I just look at it. Just from a macro level, right? And I discussed this with Chris Sanders on Run TMC. It's like, okay, it doesn't have to just be one source of the problem. In this case, you have coaching issues, but you also have player issues. Peter Skoronski, I talked to him after the last game. Were they showing you something new? What was happening? Oh, well, there were times where we weren't communicating, other times we missed assignments. Now, we've gone through this exercise plenty of times. If I sit here and tell you, hey, Jared, This cup of tea is hot. Don't drink the tea. Let it cool off. It's hot. And you drink it and burn your mouth. Is it your fault or my fault?
Either you're coaching it or you're allowing it to happen.
But that being said, what if it's the whole unit?
So
what do you do?
I understand what you're saying, right? Like, what is a coach supposed to do when he says, hey, don't do this, and then they go out and do it? And when Vrabel first took the job, he did an interview with Mike Keith on like the Titans website or whatever. And he was talking about what he learned from each coach. And this was before Urban Meyer became like toxic and they didn't want to talk about it. He said the thing he learned from Urban Meyer was that it was never the player's fault. That Urban demanded of his assistant coaches, don't come to me and say it's the player's fault.
That sounds good.
I know, but then
That
Floyd
sounds
used to
good.
say that Belichick used to have the saying all the time, either you're coaching it or you're allowing it to happen.
And I understand there's a saying is cool and all, but a saying doesn't apply all the time.
I think
what do you want them to do? Bench the whole offensive line?
Hey, what do they always say when they fire the coach? Can't fire the players.
I think it's a mix, though, because, the bottom line is, like, you can't just put it on coach.
I mean, personnel is certainly a part of the problem. There's no doubt about that.
It's a huge part of the problem.
But I also think, like, they had the personnel to win the game Sunday.
They did.
Against that JV Texans team.
But look what happened. Okay. Will Levis, right? DeAndre Hopkins is wide open on the post route. Levis throws it the way he normally does. That's 6 points. What did the Titans lose by? DeAndre Hopkins and Traylon Burks had the route combination, right? Will Levis said it himself. He got the alert, right? And he was keying in on the corner, and it was real simple. Hey, look, if the corner carries Traylon Burks on the go route, you throw it to Hopkins on the out-breaking route underneath. If he goes with Hopkins, hey, go uptown. We got a touchdown. Corner went with Hopkins.
Sure.
Burks was wide open.
And he missed him.
He threw it to Hopkins, and it was an interception.
And that's a rookie quarterback moment where the hope will be that in the future that it slows down for him so that he knows, like, hey, remember this last time? And that's going to be what determines whether or not he makes that jump is if the game does slow down. But it took like 18 of those. Like whether it was the missed PAT, whether it was, the Hopkins ball behind him, drop-ish kind of thing there at the end, right towards field goal range. Like it took 19 of those in order to lose because that Texans team was so bad. And that's where when it comes to coaching, it's like, it is your job to get the players to not make all of those mistakes. There's going to be mistakes in every football
There's
game.
going to be mistakes. But again, you could put them in position, but if the plays aren't made. Now, I will say, look, running the ball all those times on first down, that's a coaching issue.
Mm-hmm.
See, I'm going to play both sides of this. That's a coaching issue. But my thing is, it goes back to like you go to a beauty salon, and I've seen it in beauty salons, having 4 daughters. I've had to go to plenty of them. And I've seen at times it says on the wall, I'm a beautician, not a magician. And just the same, like I'm a coach, not a magician. Meaning, I can't always make chicken into chicken salad. Like it's not always going to go lemonade out of lemons. Sometimes with what I'm working with, it's not going to be what the desired result is.
See, and this is why I think the worst thing that ever happened to Mike Vrabel was John Robinson getting fired. Because when personnel was an issue, Vrabel in the past, completely blameless. Mm-hmm. And Vrabel is not blameless anymore when it comes to personnel.
Because you have the collaboration.
As I call them, the commission. Like the Gambinos and the Columbos, and they're all coming together to run the family. TD is with us. Speaking of personnel, is there a defense of how the Titans ended up with the offensive line that they ended up with that should be satisfactory? We will discuss that next. Stillman and Company, TD's here with us, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
in terms of the way Skoronski and Duncan played on Sunday, what do you say to those guys to kind of reel them back in and get them ready for this week?
Yeah, I mean, it's, show them the things that they did well, show them the things that we need to improve on, and make sure that they understand that we've got another good opponent coming in here and on, however many days from now, 3-4 days. So it's whether it was a perceived great game or perceived, not so good game, whatever it may be, like we got another opponent coming in the game. So we got to make sure that we're able to make the strides and make the corrections and improve on the things that we did well on, continue to enhance those, and get ready to go play another team here in a few days.
There you go. That was Tim Kelly today. TD's with us for the TD Power Hour. TD, here's the question I have for you. I'm not going to cry over spilt milk about the Titans' offensive line and what they did or didn't do this offseason. I think we can agree, regardless of how they ended up on Andre Dillard, that was a miss. The Skoronski thing, I believe if you're a guard at 11 overall, you better be a freaking superstar. And he is not that yet, but he probably is a true starting lineman in the league, so I'm not going to complain about that as much right now. Brewer at center, I went crazy when they gave him that tender, and I have not stopped going crazy about that. I mean, it is what it is. Brunskill, I think Brunskill can be the fifth offensive lineman on an offensive line of four decent guys. And then right tackle, they thought it was going to be Nicholas Petit-Frere. He got suspended. They signed Hubbard, who actually wasn't that bad. Then he got hurt. Petit-Frere got hurt. Now they're stuck with Radens, who actually is getting significantly
He's getting better. Yeah.
The problem is he didn't play any football in 2020, any football in 21, and as soon as he got to play some football in 22, he got hurt. Is there, I don't care about where they screwed up this past year. I'm not convinced that they're not going to screw up again. And that's what gives me a ton of anxiety.
Is Skoronski really a screw up?
Well, I would certainly say that he has not met expectations.
What are your expectations?
Oh, I mean, he should be going right to the Pro Bowl.
Right to the Pro Bowl.
And that's what
over guys like Quentin Nelson, Joe Patonio.
He should be what Quentin Nelson was as a rookie, which
Quentin Nelson was the fifth overall
sixth.
pick.
He was killing people out there. That's what I mean. If I'm drafting a guard at 11, and you know what else I was thinking about to drive me crazy about the offensive line when it comes to Skoronski? They're convinced he can't play tackle, or at least that they don't want him to play tackle, right?
What's wrong with that?
With them not wanting him to play tackle?
They've discussed and talked about their ideology, right? Their approach to – I'm not saying it's right or wrong.
Right.
But they've made it clear with their approaches. The pocket needs to be protected inside out.
But then you can't go with a backup at center and a backup at right guard.
Is Brunskill a backup?
I think Brunskill's a backup.
I think Brunskill's a starter in this league. He started for San Francisco. Obviously – when he came here, he was not a starter, but he started. I mean, check the internet. Like he has starts.
I think can be the fifth guy in a group of four.
Okay.
But if center guard's important to me, like you got to spend some money.
So if he's the fifth guy in a group of, like, help me understand this, because you put 5 offensive linemen on the field.
So in San Francisco, right, they've got a really good left tackle. When McGlinchey was there, they had a good right tackle. They had, I don't know who plays guard for them, the left guard spot. I'm sure they're fine, right? He was the fifth guy, and then they got another guy, and so he got bumped out. That kind of, hey,
So the fifth guy is on the field.
Right, but he's also like he could be replaced by the sixth guy and that there's not that much of a huge difference. Like when David Questenberry was the fifth guy here. He can be the fifth guy. Or at least he could
guy is
for
a
those.
Starter. Like I'm confused.
Right, but
here.
if I care so much about guard, center, guard that I care about that more than tackle, then I need not fringe starters. I need real starters.
But what if they feel he's a better guard than a tackle?
Talking about Skoronski?
Yes.
Well, can we try him out at tackle and see? They thought Andre Dillard was going to be a good tackle. That's my point.
You want them to this young man has not taken a snap at tackle since Northwestern. You want them to throw him out there?
I want them to at least consider the idea that they're not willing to consider. And this is what...
Do you think they didn't consider it and they said, hey, look, we still want him to play guard?
When they drafted him with the 11th overall pick, they better have known right then and there what they wanted to do with him.
I think they did.
Okay. So that takes me back again to what they had at left tackle was Dillard, right? They thought Andre Dillard could play. They thought wrong, which we all can... Again, I'm not crying over...
Yeah.
Is there a possibility that they thought wrong here and that Peter can be a good left tackle? Because a good left tackle is very, very, very valuable.
There's a possibility that they thought wrong. There's also a possibility that they thought right. And here's the thing. Many other teams projected him to be a guard, not a tackle. So this isn't something that, okay, the collaboration is alone in thinking. That was a basically universal thought.
Well, I don't know what other teams thought because they didn't draft him.
I could tell you. There are plenty of teams. I've talked to 3 other GMs.
And they thought that 11 for a guard for him was good.
They felt that Skoronski was a guard.
I think...
Not 3, 2, excuse me.
I just feel like, again, they screwed up this past offseason. I mean,
they
the proof...
did. There's no disputing that. But I don't think Skoronski is the screw-up. And I heard earlier this week that you called him a bust. Like, we got to pump the brakes.
I think he's trending there. Like, I watched Chance Warmack, and I remember when he was at Alabama and he was killing people, and he came in here and he was a freaking turnstile.
Did Chance Warmack have appendicitis, like actually have an organ removed from him?
Chance Warmack is the only guy in the history of the NFL to take out a loss of value on himself and claim on it.
Yeah. But so what I'm saying is, obviously now that's something of the past, but like, look at the man's rookie season. Like, he had an organ removed, was out some games and then came back. And I think, and actually, see if I could find this. Ramon Foster had posted some pretty interesting numbers here.
I know, those made me mad.
Why?
Because Quentin Nelson was so much better than Skoronski, and Skoronski is on par with guys that were drafted in the 3rd round.
Quentin Nelson, like, you keep comparing, like, Quentin Nelson is one of the best
high
guard
first-round picks.
He's one of the best guard prospects ever. Like, I don't
I know,
understand.
but if Steve Avila is a 2nd-round pick and is giving me the same production, then I could have waited till the 2nd round to draft
he's a guy that
a guard.
Had a TD stamp on it.
Oh, he absolutely had the TD stamp.
But I just think it's too early to bang on Skoronski. Now, this past game, that's why I went right to him. Like, my man, like, what
it was perceived as a good game or a bad game, according to Tim Kelly today. Perceived.
Well, look, man.
And like I said,
that tape don't lie.
I'm not a
Especially
doctor,
that end zone copy when you're watching O-line.
But if you've got a gunshot wound to your head, I think something's wrong, and that's how I felt there. But again, Skoronski aside, I'm fine with Skoronski. He'll be a starter next year, and I'm not, he's not going to probably meet my expectation, but that's fine. But the other guys, it was just such a train wreck this year. Why should I have faith that the same guys that put this line together are going to put together a good line next year?
Why should you have faith that whoever is brought in will do it?
I mean, at least I don't have a track record of them failing at it.
Is there a track record, though? This
year is a track record of failure.
Yeah, but you look up until this year, last year with the Lewan injury, like, that's explainable, the Lewan injury.
Sure.
But you look, for the most part, under Mike Vrabel, the offensive line has been pretty solid. Like, let's not forget the 2020 and 2021 days where, it was we're like bouncers, no white tees in the club, no Timberlands, escorting people. That's what they were saying. So it's not like this group has not been responsible for solid offensive lines in the past. Sometimes you could ask for change and say the grass is greener, but it's not always.
I think of like that good offensive line with those guys as more of like J-Rob and to a certain extent Russ Grimm a little bit, because they were as bad as this group. Maybe not as bad as this group, but they were pretty bad when Malarkey hired Russ Grimm as the offensive line coach. And it was kind of like, they hit on Nate Davis post Russ Grimm, but outside of that, like Robinson's picks and everything else went right down the toilet on the offensive line.
Unfortunately, yeah.
And that's where, like, I still don't understand when it comes to Robinson, like, how it got so bad, because at the beginning he did a good job, but then at the end he did a bad job.
It was 2 picks. The thing that's so crazy, Isaiah Wilson was actually a really good prospect. Like, you go back and you watch that big dude in zone runs, getting out in space, blocking for DeAndre Swift.
His feet in pass protection.
And feet in pass. You look at the game against the LSU game against Caleb Von Chasen.
The SEC championship game. Yeah,
yes.
He kept him right in front of him.
So it's like, all right. But you had the issue, and like I don't. There were red flags, whatever. But I mean, it starts with that, and then you got the Dylan Radins one, and
But you know what my bigger beef with Robinson was?
What?
Was letting Saffold go, not replacing him, and not bringing Quessenberry back as an insurance policy in case Radins didn't take the jump that they were expecting him to take.
And Morgan Moses, what was it?
My
3 years,
God.
$15 million.
I was ready when I did my pre-free agency. Like, here's what I was going to give him 3 and 25. He got 3 and 15, and has been worth every freaking penny of it.
Darn right. He's worth 15 in 1 year.
Oh yeah,
Let alone,
a solid
you know what
right
I mean?
tackle that you never have to worry about that starts every game. Yes, but that's my point. Is that like with the offensive line? Yeah, the AJ trade is what did Robinson in, but the offensive line was a humongous problem for
Well,
Robinson.
you asked how it went wrong. We just went through a bunch of it.
I'm now looking at this and I'm like, Robinson's worst offensive line was better than this offensive line, which I didn't think was possible.
But you also have to think that Rand and Chad Brinker and AR and these guys, Anthony Robinson, they're coming in having to fix the remnants of last year.
Sure.
Right? And I'll tell you this, you're not going to fix an offensive line in just 1 year. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Even when you draft guys, it's not going to happen.
Well, and it's harder now to draft guys because they don't practice anymore. So, and they took away a preseason game, and those things do matter. But, I mean, they got to spend some real cash. They're going to have to overpay in free agency this year.
Yeah, and, the thing is when you overpay, like when you sign an offensive lineman, you're typically overpaying because they usually, if they're good, the only reason they're going to the market is because
they wanted too much money.
They wanted too much money. So that's something we probably need to get back to.
Let's do that next. TD's with us, and, of course, we'll hit your phones at the, I would say, bottom of the hour, but the middle of the hour. 615-737-1025. Ian's looking at me like I'm crazy because I've run over the break time so bad. Stillman and Company. TD's with us, 102.5, 106 for the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios. TD still with us for the TD Power Hour. Okay, so instead of complaining about the line, which I've been doing, how do they fix the line? Can they fix the line? How hard is it going to be to fix the line?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. It's basically a continuation from last year. And, I mean, you could go out and you could sign free agents. We looked at this, right? There are a couple that, look good. Obviously, Robert Hunt, and as you mentioned, you're going to have to pay. But
overpay.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. Because I don't know that Miami will let him go, but it's funny. He was one of the other guys. We had him on Talking with TD, man. We keep coming up with guys that were on the show that are pretty good. Coming up with guys that were on the show that weren't also. But, I mean, you look at the free agent group, there's not a whole lot to pick from, right? And I think a big part of this is going to end up being like, where do they fall, right? As far as the hierarchy is concerned, Fashanu, Alt, like it's going to be hard to get those guys. Maybe they'll have to do like the Laramie Tunsil type of treatment when he came out to get them. I'm joking, but I just don't know if either of those guys are going to be available. When it's time to pick.
What's tough about that too is like when it comes to offensive linemen in the draft. I mean, I remember when people were telling us that Ike Ekwonu could have been worth the number 1 overall pick in that draft, and then I watched him.
It's a crapshoot. Like, I mean,
he might be worse than Duncan.
I remember people were telling us that whoever player X was. It's a crapshoot. It's a crapshoot.
That's where it's like, and I go back to Munchak here. I've said this to you. I've said this on the air. I've said this. He doesn't have a job right now, and I feel pretty certain that he would not rule it out of coming back to the Titans. The money's going to have to be right. But I know that the Titans would be better equipped to fix the offensive line if, when it comes to evaluating these guys, if Munchak can give the thumbs up or the thumbs down. And I know that because the guy that used to sit in this chair relied very heavily on Mike Munchak giving the thumbs up or the thumbs down. And that's how John Runyon gets turned from a 6th-round pick into an all-pro. And so I really think that, and it's no knock on Howdeling, but his resume is what it is, and it's not Mike Munchak's. And that's where I'm like, all of these things we're talking about are going to cost an exorbitant amount of money.
Yeah. But, I mean, if you want to win, like, you got to spend the money.
And, like, doesn't it – if you pay Munchak a fortune to be the offensive line coach, which I think you'd have to do just because of the history and everything else, but if you pay him a fortune, don't you think ultimately you'll end up saving money because you'll be able to develop more linemen and everything else? You'll hit on more picks, and then you won't have to go overpay for Robert Hunt.
No, that's a very good conclusion to draw. I wonder if that's something that has been considered or even has been done. We don't know, but, I mean, that's definitely something to look at. But, I mean, I just think you got to have the players too, though. You have to have the players. Runyon, you mentioned him. He was definitely talented, though. Like,
sure.
It's just a matter of cultivating that talent. Jalen Duncan is talented. It's a matter
Munchak,
of getting that work ethic right and, getting him to be, at that point, which the work ethic is getting right, but getting him to be that aggressor, snap in and snap out. And, I think you might have something, but it's just there's a long way to go.
Sure.
And that takes patience.
I want a line coach that I can rely on to help evaluate the players. To really, like, where if you're Rand Carthon, the question is not, do I believe in this left tackle? The question is, okay, I've got the thumbs up on this left tackle. Do I want the left tackle over the inside linebacker? Do I want the left tackle over the receiver or over?
And they're going to be in that situation.
Absolutely.
Right? They're going to be like 4th or 5th tackle versus 2nd or 3rd receiver versus 1st tight end, Brock Bowers. So it's going to be interesting. I would love to be in that draft room, to hear.
I would love to have you in there to say, no, don't do that. Don't make that pick.
Listen, it's easy for me in this position where, like, okay, I say somebody's good and they're not, and like, oh, okay, I get the little morons on social media and stuff. You said their jobs on the line. So don't thrust me into that.
The
please.
difference is, and I don't know how much money you make. I'm sure you're doing okay for yourself. We don't make as much money as they do.
Yeah.
That's the difference between
too much is to whom much is given, much is desired.
Exactly.
Right?
Do you think when it comes to them just trying to find the best 5 guys they can put together and to put a line together, because again, left tackles are so hard to find.
Mm-hmm.
Peter moving to left tackle could be on the table this offseason.
I don't know. It just doesn't seem like that's what they want to do. It just doesn't. So I would say more than likely not. But I mean, we'll see. I don't think so.
I think this is going to be a big offseason for them to figure out that offensive line. And
Absolutely.
I mean, when I say big offseason, I mean like it's
career altering.
It is.
Tennessee career altering.
It is. If they, and you're right, they're not going to fix the line. I mean, I say they're not. I did see, Russ Grimm that first, and like I didn't even know who Ben Jones was, and they signed him out of free agency.
Mm-hmm.
And Ben Jones was probably a better player than he ever got credit for here, and he got plenty of credit when he was here, but he was that kind of player. And they signed him immediately. And they drafted Jack Conklin, and they had Russ Grimm coaching him, and they went from terrible to DeMarco Murray leading the AFC in rushing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's the kind of jump they have to make this year.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time. Like, if I was one of these hedge fund guys or stock guys, and I was on CNBC analyzing it, I'm rooting for them, but I'm betting against them.
Ben Jones started out as a guard
with the Texans.
Mm-hmm. Even though they drafted Brandon Brooks out of Miami of Ohio in the 3rd round, Ben Jones beat him out. Then Brooks eventually developed. They bumped him to center. Brooks had the left guard spot.
They need a Ben Jones.
That's my guy, man, Brandon Brooks.
He went to Philly,
Great
right?
Dude. Yeah, he was in Philly. He was part of that big
He got paid
16.
a boatload of money, I think.
And earned it. Got a second deal, too.
All right, we'll get your phones for TD as we always do. 615-737-1025 or right to them. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Hiller's Cash for the Holidays promotion is back, so they're giving away cash for the holidays with select purchases. Hiller wants to make sure every child experiences the joy of Christmas, just like TD experienced the joy of Christmas last night, that I can tell you. So they're donating $50 in toys to Toys for Tots with every tankless water heater purchase, and giving away a $250 Visa gift card with each unit. Get a $500 Visa gift card when you buy select new HVAC systems, or get a $500 Visa gift card with the purchase of any new whole home generator. And these purchases all have great financing options with low monthly payments. These deals are only available